Welcome to the Develop Yourself podcast, where we teach you everything you need to land your first job as a software developer by learning to develop yourself, your skills, your network, and more. I'm Brian, your host. Today, I'll be speaking with Jack Herrington, writer, software engineer, YouTuber. I'm a subscriber to his channel, and you should be too, the Blue Collar Coder, where he breaks down front-end concepts, web development, best practices. Just an awesome guy to learn from. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks. Thanks for having me. Super glad to be here. Glad to meet you. And thank you for subscribing to the channel and letting other folks know. I think that's great too. I really appreciate it.
There's a few people out there that dominate the tech space, and you're the least, I don't want to say least problematic, but the least controversial for the sake of being controversial. And I appreciate that.
You know, my mom was a big influence on my life, and she was all about, pay it forward and pass it on and, kind of don't, like, if you don't have anything nice to say, then don't say anything at all. And I unfortunately broken that rule a little bit lately, but that's how I live it. And, that's served me well. And I try to kind of show by example, and, I'm just letting folks get you started in your career, or help you if you're a more advanced engineer or more advanced in your career, come at you with all kinds of content from all levels. So it's been fun.
I love your deep dives, and you've shown that you could be successful, have a popular YouTube channel, really teach people practical, useful stuff at all sorts of levels. Like I make stuff on the React compiler, Next.js, micro front ends, and it actually is palatable. It's fun to watch. You do it in this great way, and you've stayed away from clickbait stuff for the most part. It's really cool to see. I'm a huge fan.
I don't want to. I think to make clickbait, you really have to be basically saying stuff that's negative, and I just. I'd rather not do that. And it's hard to be clickbaity if you're being positive about stuff. So
that's a good point.
Try and walk that line, but not super I guess I'll say things like, I'm wrong. I was wrong about this. That actually a lot of folks
people
will dial
like
in for that. Yeah. They're like, oh yeah. Admitting you're wrong.
I like that. I'm like, oh, if he's a smart guy, if he's wrong, well, it makes me feel a little bit not so bad about myself for all the mistakes I've made over the years,
We're all wrong about something.
Yeah, we're all wrong sometimes.
So besides this is the prevailing thought, and that's whatever. Yeah.
So besides being an internet personality, you have a really impressive career in software. You worked at Nike as a principal engineer, Walmart as a front end architect. I'm always curious to know people at your level, where they got started with coding.
Oh,
what
wow.
led you to coding?
Oh, man. I just realized that I've been coding for 40 years.
Wow.
Yeah. Crazy, right?
I started when you were 2.
If only. I started when I was 13. Some friends up the hill had a Model 1 TRS-80, and it was cool because it was the one thing I was failing really hard in the school. I was just not doing well, struggling all the time. My sister was this amazing brainiac, and my brother was a brainiac, but they were 6 and 7 years beyond me. And so here I was coming in their shadow, and I was supposed to be this brainiac, and I'm failing everything. And then I found computing and writing code, and I was writing little games for my friends and learning how for loops and variables worked and things like that.
Very cool.
And something just clicked. And then after that, I just fell in love with it. I love that this thing would even though I was this guy who was failing, this computer would listen to me and do what I told it to do. And that was pretty cool. And so then I think I was 16 when I had my first paying gig. Wow. And, which was crazy because I was still in high school, but I was, working at this literal orthodontist's office doing Fortran, and then I learned C. And so it was all kind of self-taught all the way up the line. And I didn't have the grades to get into college or anything like that because I was,
oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And so I just kind of went from job to job, went on recommendations, and it was a different time, there wasn't that many gigs, but I finally ended up in Australia, and then in the Bay Area, and the Bay Area is kind of where it really took off in terms of, there's just so much stuff in that, in that world. And that was kind of just when when Fang and those folks were starting to say that, non-traditional was okay. Because they originally started off like, if you wanted to get into Google or whatever, you had to have a PhD. Yeah, totally. The Stanford pipeline all the way to Google. And, they kind of backed off on that a little bit. So I did some fun startups. Never actually did Fang. Oh, wait, hold on. Well, I kind of did a Fang. I did Adobe. Like I was at Macromedia for a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah. If you're familiar with like Flex, back in the day, like Flash,
Okay.
Yeah. Flash, like Flex was like the commercial version of Flex. It was like, or Flex was like the commercial version of Flash. It was trying to be an enterprise toolkit for like building apps. You had like all the controls you'd want, like buttons and selects and combos and whatever.
Gotcha.
And, so I was on the team that built like the IDE for that. So it's been great. It's been really fun. Working with teams and working with fantastic folks. And I've done the management thing, at a couple of different places, but I really, I just love to code. And the content stuff has allowed me to do that. Like I can just kind of take any tool off the shelf and start playing with it and be like, yeah, this is really cool. Like, and getting into like, oh, I'm going to take, LLMs and, vector DBs and like throw those together. What is that going to look like? And this has been great. It's very fun seeing the evolution of it. And now with the content stuff, kind of being there for folks to pass on any of those skills that I learned along the way.
That's amazing. I was looking at your LinkedIn and I saw high school at your education. And I thought, wow, that's really, to me, super impressive that you learned on your own and got really, really far in your career on the technical track. And then,
I wouldn't say I learned alone. I mean, I think we all learn with the people that were around. I mean, that's the thing. Those are the jobs that you look back on and you're like, you either are making great friends you have for life, which is what I did at Macromedia. There were a bunch of friends who, I still talk with all the time.
That's cool.
Or you work with people who are just amazing, like super talented. And I was working at a social networking company where a lot of it kind of went bust, but a lot of the folks went to Facebook and kind of created the core of Facebook, called Ning. And, those folks, I learned just so much, like every day, just watching these folks and being part of it. It was really fun. So those are the ones you really look forward to, are the ones you either make friends or are on a great team or both. Both is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can look back at the few places I've worked, like about the last 5 companies, and there are a few pivotal ones where the people were so smart that they accelerated me really quickly just by just being around them and just kind of soaking. I'm like, oh, that's how you write a unit test the right way. Oh, that's how you think through building out this app. It was the kind of education you can't really pay for. It's really cool. I got the benefit of being in the Bay Area too. So it's a lot of talent out here, Oh
yeah. Are you still there?
I'm still here.
Okay. Yeah. I moved out to Portland because it got too crowded. It was like crazy. Like I was getting on the BART trying to get into the city and I'm like, man, this is like Japanese trains, man. Like everybody's getting smushed in. You're like,
I remember that.
Brutal.
And now it's like not like that anymore. Now I'm like, I live in the Bay Area. I work for, I'm going to work for a company in the Bay Area and we're remote.
Oh, so, okay. Well, that's handy. Yeah. But then even if you want to go see your friends, like we had friends up in El Cerrito and we lived in Union City and it was like an hour and a half on 880 because like 880 is always messed up. And it's like, oh.
That's still the same. Yeah.
Yeah.
The California
I know. I was down there just recently.
Out of California.
It was brutal. Yeah. It's just brutal. Yeah.
I'm curious about this. Front end to me seems to get a lot of hate or not taken as seriously.
Yeah, for sure.
Some other things. Yeah.
Which is crazy because it's so complicated. Yeah.
That's what I feel like. And I have much less experience than you, but I feel like it seems like it's getting more complicated. Yeah. And sometimes you hear about like a glass ceiling on front end devs. You seem to have broken that, if there even is one in the first place. But do you have like general career advice for people in web dev or front end that are looking to get into technical leadership?
Ooh, well, there's kind of management leadership, but I mean, if you're talking about, I guess, team lead kind of thing, I would say embrace full stack, right? You want to be the person who kind of understands the whole thing from end to end. Even if you're not an expert at any of those particular things, you understand the kind of how everything sort of fits together at every level of the stack. and understanding those and having that knowledge, it can be super beneficial. Just at a, and then I think there's also folks who also like specialize in things nowadays. You can do that as well. Like you can get some specialization in like AI or DevOps or things like that kind of are like a little bit of extra help when it comes to hiring. It's like, oh, okay, you can handle like Docker as well as this. I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, that's a nice value add.
That makes a lot of sense. That's kind of the way I've kind of seen it. But it is a frustrating sometimes to feel like whether you're online or Twitter, just people dumping on JavaScript in general and things like that.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It feels like you don't get the respect sometimes.
Yeah, well, that's full stack Java. I mean, that's just JavaScript in general. You could be full stack and still get dumped on about that.
That's true. That's a good point.
I just think it's so powerful. I mean, there's really nothing like the unmatched power of React in terms of its reach. I mean, you can go take a single code base now with like a Tamagui which is a cross-platform UI toolkit. And you can write from a single code base, web, Electron, Android, iOS. And as a single developer, that's insanely productive. And you think about that as like the start of a startup. Yeah, that's amazing. And that's kind of like when I think about my viewer, the person watching it, a lot of the times I have in mind like a solopreneur, like me, right? I'm at a party. Somebody's like, yeah, like you've experienced this, I'm sure, a zillion times before.
Yeah.
Like, I've got this great app idea.
It's like Uber for cats.
Yes. Cuber or whatever. Yeah. So like, and you're somehow convinced that like Cuber is going to be a thing. And, so it's like, what can I do to like get myself set up with something to where we can try it out or get all the way up to where like we could actually pitch it in front of a VC. So it's got to be a thing. It's got to be tangible. It's got to be something that actually works ish. Right. And there's just nothing like React to do that in terms of like the front facing stack. And then you think about the stuff on the back end. I mean, there's just so many companies like giving away crazy amounts of compute power to try and draw you in to their stack. Like I worked with one just recently, Convex, that does like basically a hosted database. Yeah. They're kind of like a next generation Firebase thing.
Okay.
They got, actually, I think they've got Vector DB now built in, which is pretty cool too. But they're just giving away just a ton of free DB space, auth, the rest of it as kind of like they want to get into that solopreneur space. So they're like, well, we'll grow with you. And so if you're like, honestly, if you've just got the giddy up and go, like you can change the world if you really want to.
It's wild.
And that's a great thing about it.
I'm shocked. Like you can deploy an app, you can get like something like Supabase or the one you just mentioned, and you can have a full stack end-to-end app with a ton of users or, more users than you probably need when you're starting off to have a pretty viable business at the end of the day.
Or at least to know if there is viability there to get your first, 100 or whatever folks. And then you can actually say, cool, well, we're making a profit because we're not paying really anything on the back end. And then you go to VC and you can start actually like negotiating and things like that. Yeah, I think there's a huge amount of potential there. And that's fascinating. I guess since I was, that 13-year-old kid, like making stuff for my friends, like now the making stuff for your friends is like making an app, that does cool stuff.
It's interesting. The journey. I see a lot of developers, they have this entrepreneurial streak, me included. They tend to, they want to build stuff. We can build stuff. And you start thinking, maybe I can monetize this. Maybe I can make like a thing that people like, or maybe even make a little bit of money off this. I'm curious about this too. You seem like a busy guy. You have like a life, I assume, that doesn't involve coding maybe. And then you have like a high level position in a company where you're in charge of technical direction. And then you make all these videos. What led you to want to be on social media, and what led you to be a person like in the public spotlight on YouTube and start a YouTube channel?
I actually had a friend of mine from like when I was 13. He reached out and he saw my, some videos and he was like, you've been like, he reminded me that I've been doing this since I taught him variables back then, like what a variable was, which I guess at the time, like he didn't know and I guess I knew. So that was cool. But it kind of started me on this path of like, in order to learn something well, I needed to learn it to the point where I would, and this maybe sound crazy, but I would teach it to myself. I would actually I'd be on a walk and I'd be just kind of reciting my understanding of this thing to myself and creating a mental model to put it into. And that has helped me really well in terms of communicating it to other developers, kind of one-on-one, or as I started like working in larger companies, doing like rollouts. So at like, for example, Walmart Labs, I was in charge of doing the React rollout. So, not only designing kind of the library structures with, my team, but also like, how do you promote it? And we had internal React, conferences. We actually had the React Native team, at Walmart Labs on one of the conferences. Cool. It was really cool. And I just really enjoyed that. And then, so later on, as I was at Nike and I was doing these brown bags and I'm like, I could just like post this on YouTube. Yeah. And people could watch it. And then another thing was kind of interesting was like, I could avoid having the same conversations over and over again by just like, hey, you're interested in watch this video. Exactly. Like, so you want to learn about module federation. And that was actually one of the reasons why I got into module federation in particular was Nike had what a lot of companies do, which is like this, like they took Nike.com from one monolithic JSP thing, J2E, and then they broke it into like 10 different like React apps that were then brought together by the Akamai CDN. And it kind of, from the customer experience, it looks like one big thing, but from the back end, it looks like 7 or 10 teams doing, this team does search and this team does PDP or product detail page and this, the home page and all that. And so getting those folks like all lined up, like that was going to be, you have kind of one-off, talk to them one by one, or you can make a reasonably engaging YouTube video and be like, okay, here's 10 minutes, take 10 minutes out and you'll understand more about what we're trying to do.
Wow. So you're the dude that sold Walmart on React, essentially. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Nuts.
Yeah.
Man. And you wrote a book about micro front-ends as well.
Yeah.
I mean, you've been like publishing knowledge for a while now.
Yeah, I used to joke that like I had as many books as my kid was old, and at the time I think it was like that lasted until 6, and then after that I stopped writing books because everybody was like watching videos, and that's actually what started getting me into like screencasting, and then working with screencast companies was what kind of led me to, hey, if I'm actually going to do this, I want to do this in my control. Right. Which was, so I want to go and create my own YouTube channel. And I remember like the guy from, I can't remember, I think it was like Pact or one of those companies that was doing the screencast stuff. And I'm like, okay, I could just go off and start a YouTube channel. And he literally laughed. He's like, oh, really? Right. Sure. You're good. Yeah. Of course you.
Who's going to watch you talking about
you? Like, exactly. And in the beginning, my daughter laughed too. I remember it was like right around, sort of early kind of, I want to say COVID, but maybe that doesn't make sense timing wise. But like the channel was still only like a couple hundred people, and we were walking around, she's laughing, she's like, you think you're some thing on YouTube, whatever.
That's wild.
And then like here it is, like 180,000 subscribers, and I kind of look at her like everyone's like, look who's laughing now.
I mean, I was surprised we got you on the show. I mean, you're up there.
I'm up there. I'm happy to be anywhere, man. Like I just want to, as I say, pay it forward and, just try and get out there, promote some knowledge.
Speaking of the YouTube arc that you're in, I mean, that's funny. I didn't realize your channel, to me, COVID doesn't seem like that long ago. It's only been a few years and you've like really skyrocketed in popularity.
But it's a few years. Isn't that crazy?
That is a few years. That is crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. I guess it's almost, it's 3.
It's almost 4.
Wow. Woo.
Yeah, right. Speaking of your YouTube career, what do you feel about this tech content creator space? Because it's new. It's kind of wild to see like celebrities on YouTube that are tech creators, but there's also like a large tech reaction space too. What's like your general thoughts on the tech creator space? What would you like to see more of, less of?
I'd like to see more voices. I always want to see more voices. And when I think of, people ask me like, how do I get out there? How do I get noticed for my first job? How do I distinguish myself? I think the easiest thing to do is write content. Actually, that's like the most accessible mechanism, because when you think about it, if you're the kind of person that takes notes as you're building something, and I'm actually that kind of person, weirdly, like I've just started kind of trying to get into that habit, but like, okay. If you're taking like the markdown, like, oh, I did, this command followed by that command, followed by that command, blah, 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 blah. Cause sometimes it can be a little hairy, like sometimes the documentation's not quite right or whatever. And if you've got that, you've got an article. All you need to do is just put a little, little lines in between about,
for sure,
go here, do this, whatever. I don't even think anybody reads it. I mean, I actually wrote a lot of articles back in the day, and, I would notice that I would get questions about, hey, this command doesn't work because, the SQL the query doesn't work. And it's like, well, you're supposed to like initialize the database first. And they would just go and like take those code blocks and just copy and paste them into their terminal, but they wouldn't read anything in between, because it's like text. I don't need text. Who needs to read that? Right. Yeah. So like at a certain point, like just putting something out there on Medium or Dev2 and like, hey, this is how particularly if you searched for it and you did not find it, right? Mm-hmm. There's probably going to be somebody that's going to come along and is going to actually search for exactly that same thing. You can be their savior. Out there. You can be that savior, and you can be the person that can get out there. And I think that's fine. If that's all you want from it, then, to get that notice and that job, that's fine. If you actually want to be a full-time content creator, then that's like a whole different level of kind of thing. But I'm a huge proponent. Mm-hmm. It's a lot to be a content creator.
I could imagine, because your videos are polished and like edited, obviously, and you're doing research on top of them. In a ballpark figure for like your average 15, 20-minute video, how long does that take you to make?
Research, editing, production, everything, at least probably 20 hours.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay. And you got to figure
a lot.
It's a heck of a lot. And I mean, I'm thankful that my daughter is now out of college, actually, so that she's gone all the way through. And so I've got a lot of free-ish time for that kind of thing. But you do, I never really want to look at the numbers that come back when it was like, okay, you got 30,000 views on that video that you took 20 hours on, and that it counts for $50 of revenue, from ads. And it's like, wow, that's brutal. That's like $2 an hour. That's right. Like, what am I doing here again? So, yeah.
But then I think
if you see folks like doing sponsorships, like there's a reason why they're doing that.
Oh yeah, I don't blame anybody at all. I think people kind of get this too high moral stance sometimes, like just make free content just for free because it's great. I'm like, well, that's not free to make because people are spending time to make the content, right?
Right. How is that economically viable in any possible way?
It's kind of strange. I think with so much free education in quotes on YouTube and things, I think people have kind of gotten used to this idea like everything should be free, and if it's not, then I'm not going to use it or something like that. Which, as that's a whole other topic in itself. But do you feel like that's also like a career benefit for you, but especially for younger people that are earlier in their career, maybe, or just people that are earlier in their career, to be online? That there's like, besides the economic benefit, there's the benefit of just, hey, here I am as a developer.
Here I am as a developer, but also, and I'm sure you look for this in the folks that you are cultivating through your kind of pipeline of junior to senior developers sort of folks. It's that communications skill. It's that ability to have something in your mind, but also be able to structure it in a way that can communicate it to other developers. Like, to me, that is the progression that I look for in junior, mid, senior, tech lead, is not just about your technical prowess. In fact, it's as you go up, probably less about your technical prowess and more about your ability to work with other people, but also kind of sum it all up and communicate it to different audiences, like not only technical audiences, but also the C-suite. Like, how do you how do you look at things from their perspective so you can say, okay, this is, when it comes to the bottom line, like, here's how this is going to change our, the numbers that we're shooting for or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. How do you say? They don't care if you're using TypeScript. Or
they don't care.
The implementation details, like you're trying to sell a business idea. I've learned that a lot, as I've gotten into management and realized, wait a second, why am I? Right. They don't care. And sometimes I'm just saying a buzzword salad of things, and I'm like, I need to check myself and realize no one cares or knows what I'm talking about at this point.
Can you deliver value faster? Can you? Will there be less churn? Will you spend less time refactoring? Right? That's how you spin something like, TypeScript is an example. It's like, we're going to embrace this thing. It's called blah.
Yeah,
TypeScript, whatever. Yeah, but here's the business impact of that. We're going to have this much more penetration into the developer market. We're going to be able to, deliver code more reliably and in larger volumes and yada, yada, yada.
Yeah. So
I'm just thinking of emergency there. I don't know. I'd have to actually work it out.
Yeah. When I think about a lot of early career developers and their JavaScript fundamentals, I used to really promote learn your JavaScript fundamentals, promises maybe, or things like closure, type coercion, things like that. But I'm beginning to think now, I'm like, is that accurate advice? I'm just curious, with React.js being one of the most marketable skills and most companies not really hiring pure JavaScript developers, how much JavaScript do you think is really necessary to learn nowadays?
Oh, quite a bit. Everything you just mentioned is super, super important. And I see folks on my Discord server struggling with that kind of stuff daily, how to manage promises, how to, closure state is a huge deal in React. You've got the fact that you're kind of running through these components, multiple times. You're getting references. Oh my God. I've done
reference versus value.
Multiple videos on references. One thing that I notice is I'm kind of blessed in a way that I had to go through C and C++ and blah, blah, blah. And even though I'm self-taught, I was into it enough to I read a book on compiler design, built my own compiler at one point.
Oh, wow.
Things like that, random stuff, you do. And so I understand stacks and heaps and memory management and all that. But your boot camper folk don't really know that, right? That's not a thing that you necessarily have to think about. But actually you do, because and I think this is one of those clickbaity titles, which was JavaScript is lying to you, in that it says that you don't have to think about that stuff about memory, but garbage
you do. Collection.
Right, you have to think about garbage collection, but you also have to think about memory in terms of where are you going to manage arrays and objects, right? You can't put those. And I mean, I think about stack and stuff, but even if you don't know those terms like stack and heap, you don't understand how all this is, working and laid out. And once you do, then it makes a lot more sense as to why, an array with the exact same contents as some other array is actually different to React, because there are two different references in memory. And so that can be one of those things where you're really frustrated. You're you're consoling, logging out these two arrays, and you're they're exactly the same
thing. What
the
hell? There's the same thing.
What's happening? Why is my reference, why my dependency array going off? It's the same thing. And,
yes.
Right. So those kind of things, I think it's very, very important. You can't be a good React developer without really understanding your JavaScript fundamentals. And if you want to get into things like some of these more, I want to say closer to the metal frameworks, although that's kind of ridiculous, right? Well, so certainly Rust, but I was thinking more Solid, which is much more kind of thinner to the web platform kind of thing. Then you have to know those a little bit better as well, how it's going to manage elements and all that.
Yeah.
But yeah, Rust. Wow. Very close to me.
I learned JavaScript for so long, and I did some C#, did some Ruby, and I feel like I've done JavaScript for so long. I'm like, let me just go way in the opposite direction. Then I feel like a real dummy. Now I'm trying to learn a little bit of Rust and feeling completely lost. But it's been fun to.
I would try Go.
Try a new language.
If you want to give yourself a
that.
nice smooth landing into like these new systems languages that are nowhere near as gnarly as like C and C++. Yeah, Go is like, cause you're right. I did some Rust, I think, a couple 6 months ago, and I used ChatGPT to like write most of it. And I'm like, this is gobbledygook. Like, I don't know, what are you doing? Like, I can't, but there's some cool things in there. There's like all this like memory management stuff where it's very controlled in terms of memory management, which is solving a huge problem from C and C++ days. But yeah. The other thing is, I think if you don't use it daily, that's a problem too. Like you can learn it, totally. And then you like Git. It all. Like the last month's controversy around learning Git. It was like, I've learned Git like 3 times and forgotten it like 3 times, and now I know exactly like 4 commands that I all use every day.
That's funny. One of my most controversial posts was my Git workflow. People just say, that's the worst Git flow. How, I'm like, well, I don't know. I've just been using it for like 10 years, but what do I know? I don't know.
Well, let's compare. Like my Git workflow when I get into detached head state, which I'm not even sure I understand what those words mean, is to basically just clone a copy of it, copy all the files that I changed into the clone, and then be like, you know what? That's good enough for me. And then if that works, I put it up, and then I remove the original directory, and there you go. And it's like, I convinced myself that, well, I've started from fresh again. I mean, it's kind of fresh, right? I'm
kind of like, if it works, like if my goal, like I always think, what's the goal in mind here? Is it to like be super proficient in the exact Git command, or is it to get the repo back in the state that I need it, or to put code where I want it? And if that's kind of my ultimate goal, then I'm going to do what's going to get me there. At the same time, I don't like to get into arguments about rebase versus merge commits. Like whatever you tell me you need to do, I'll do it. But I'd prefer not to make it more complicated if necessary.
Yeah, I'm still not really sure I understand anything about rebasing or fast forwarding or any of that. Like, again, it's like I try and also, that's another thing I would say for folks that are just starting out, like keep your changes really small, like 1 file, 2 files, and keep them very atomic. It's like, I'm going to change this piece of text or whatever. Don't like have 50 things inside of a single commit, because it really makes it harder on folks to review it when they don't understand, like, wait a second, you're changing this piece of text over here, but you're also changing this reducer function over there. What, like, these two things are they related?
Unrelated.
Yeah. Unrelated.
But
no, it's like, it's a day's worth of work. No, that's not how this thing works.
Oh, that's a really good one. I gotta use that in a video. Actually, that's a good one for my next Git video that gets me chewed up online. Everyone,
but it probably gets you a lot of subscribers.
It was the video that blew me up on Instagram. I was like, who would have thought? I was trying to be helpful, and it was the most controversial thing apparently I've said. And I was like, oh, this is funny. Went from like 1,000 to 10,000 overnight.
I had one recently, or not recently, but like, but it's the gift that keeps on giving, which was like when Copilot first started really getting known. I put out a short that was like, how I know AI is not going to take my job.
Yes, I saw that one.
Yeah. And people keep watching and watching and watching that one. And the thing that I love about it is that they used to say, like right at the beginning, you just wait 6 months. 6 months. It's going to take your job.
Devin AI.
Right. And then like 6 months passes. And now it's like, ooh, you just wait. It's a year, and now it's like, now the number is like 5 years out. And I'm like, this is guys,
just
like,
stop.
Yeah.
Stop the
when
fear
is the
mongering.
LLM going to like talk with my product manager about, negotiate a thing? You're like, no, it's not. And who's going to run this AI?
Yeah, like who's going to just type in like, well, it's funny. Sometimes I wonder, like, have you guys worked on teams of people before? Like on any moderate sized company? Do you realize all the meetings and the things that change here and there, and the legal people that get involved and the design department? And I'm like, I just don't see that happening.
Yeah.
Everybody's talking not only about AI, but about the developer job market and how brutal it is for new grads. Is there anything you recommend in like a specific technology or things that people should do that are new on the market that would improve their chances?
Yeah, I mean, as I say, like definitely get out there and get your toe in the content space. But also, I would say that subspecialization is really good. Like you want to distinguish yourself from the 5 other candidates that are going for this position by kind of adding more range to yourself and being able to handle more and be more self-contained. And so I would say like things like DevOps, that's a huge win
for sure.
Yeah, AI skills are fantastic. It's sad, I guess, in a way that like AI kind of is trailing on Web3 and NFTs and all that stuff, because that was clearly scam. But AI is clearly, there is value there. Like, and
for sure.
It's the long tail of this thing, this ML trend that's been going on for 20 years. So it's not like crazy.
I wish I had stuck with some data science. Yeah. I remember about 10 years ago or so, the manager at my old company, he was getting into data and he was really into it. And I was amazed by it. I was like, oh, this is really cool, like Python and data frames, and like going on sites like Kaggle and learning about that. And now I'm like, I wish I'd stuck with that. I think I'd be in a really strong position right now. But I love software engineering and web development in general. It's definitely, I don't regret my choice at all. But I do feel a lot of people are nervous about getting into web dev, maybe specifically nowadays. They feel like there's not much opportunity.
It's too crowded.
That's what I think that's the like prevailing feeling. I don't know how I feel about that, or your thoughts on that.
I'm still optimistic about it. I think everything has to have a UI. So there's definitely opportunity out there. I mean, I've definitely heard of layoffs throughout the industry. But I'm not sure correlation is causation. I don't know what exactly is driving that, but there's definitely, I would say we're probably in for a contraction, at least in like the developer tools space as things start merging a little bit more. So you're going to see those companies start to either merge and lay off or, just disappear kind of thing, or trim down to the point where they become acqui-hire targets.
Yeah. I mean, I was recently a quote unquote victim of layoffs, no hard feelings to the former company. But I found myself hired fairly quickly and just anecdotally. I mean, I don't like to look too much at anecdotal evidence and extrapolate it out because I'm like, that's my experience. I don't know what's going on in the market. I can look at what everybody else is looking at. But I just saw everybody on my team that were engineers got hired very quickly. Nice. I also saw that the layoffs were mostly affecting people in a marketing organization. So even though it was like, you can look at it like it wasn't quite a tech layoff as it was just a layoff. Still unfortunate, but yeah, it is. It's hard to get like a good grip on like what the reality is out there in the market right now. I'm fairly optimistic, but maybe just because I'm an optimistic person.
I don't know if that's a weird thing about computers is like we live in this world of or software where it's like the compiler or the language or whatever our platform is that we're working with and all that is telling us daily that you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. And then somehow, and then finally you're right, which is like the moment that we all wait for. It's like, whoa, it worked. Yeah, kind of thing. But then, how are we eternal optimists? Like, how are we always the ones that are like underestimating how long it's going to take to get something done? Like, how does that, I don't understand that psychology, but I see it all the time. People underestimating stuff.
Yeah. I think you kind of need that a little bit. I don't know. It kind of keeps me motivated.
Sane.
Yeah, keeps me right. Like, I'll get it. Eventually it'll work out.
Right. If I knew how long this was really going to take, I would never try it in the first place. Exactly. But yeah, a couple of thoughts thinking about what you just said. Like one, I guess I missed the big one, which is networking, right? So go to go to the meetups, do the virtual meetups, get out there, get wherever you can. In fact, actually, a local high school kid, just kind of reached out to me, email, hey, I'm in Portland. I saw you at the React meetup. There were a lot of folks around. I was kind of shy. Yeah. You want to talk? And I was like, hey, well, I'm up for coffee. You want to go for a coffee? And we went for coffee and
very cool.
Just talking to him. He was one of those folks who had clearly he kind of developed the skill on his own, and just was passionate about it. And so I connected him with a friend of mine who runs a consultancy, and he's going great. And that was just,
That's awesome.
A couple weeks ago. So it's just, it's great to see. So just, just reach out to folks. Like, I don't bite, I will say there are times though when I'll get people who hit me up on LinkedIn and like immediately go,
oh my God,
here's my resume. Here's my resume. Can you find me a gig? I'm like, dude,
who are you?
Who are you? Right? What? I am not. And I write back like, I'm not a recruiter. I said,
yeah.
And even, and I definitely companies have stopped kind of reaching out to me they used to, so maybe that's a sign of a cooling market, but like I'm not getting the questions of like, hey, who would you recommend for such and such anymore?
Oh, okay.
Like I used to. Yeah.
Interesting. But I mean, that's a really cool story because, even me reaching out, I think it goes to show you, like, if you don't ask, you won't know.
Yeah.
It's worth it. Like if you come at somebody genuinely, like I'm genuinely a fan of your work and I'm like, oh, I like what you do. And you come at somebody, when people do that to me, it makes me feel important. It makes me feel special. And like, I'm happy to share advice. And I think people underestimate that. They try to go it alone or just kind of end up talking into the ether of the internet and not really connecting with people and making those actual connections.
Right.
Like that.
Getting frustrated and feeling like the world's against them and all that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I think people also overestimate their competition because for every person that makes a genuine connection, there's 20 other people like in your inbox like that just saying, hey, here's my resume. Give me a job. And you're like, does this work? Like, how is this? Maybe it does. And maybe it does. And we just don't know. And that's why they do it all the time.
Maybe,
I don't know.
But like,
who knows?
If it's not the thing that's going to work in person, it's not going to work for me online. I kind of think of those sort of the same way. And if you're just like, if you're walking up to me at a party, like, get me a job. Like,
yeah. Whoa. I got to go.
Yeah, right.
Time for me to go. Nice to meet you.
I'm going to go talk to this other person over here that's talking about like the latest movies or whatever,
Yeah, right. I got a couple more questions for you.
Hit me. I'm enjoying myself. Yeah.
I'm loving this conversation with you. What are some resources out there that you'd recommend for people specifically trying to learn JavaScript front-end development, whether it's books, courses, whatever?
My channel.
Of course. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. There's like the fundamental base learning stuff, which I don't really have an opinion on. I mean, I'm sure that there are good courses out there that, your eggheads or those folks, but I do think that they're like, I have a free TypeScript course on my channel, like full on. Although people keep like, hey, can you update it? And I'm like, well, actually not a whole lot has changed, but I'll probably make some sort of thing at some point. But like people get the feeling that because it was done 2 years ago that like it's not actually topical. And it's like, no, TypeScript, React, kind of fundamentals are there. Let's see. So I would come up with a way to keep yourself kind of in the loop. And I've got my own stuff. I've got daily.dev that I connect with. And then there's also an RSS feed that I have or a set of RSS feeds. I had like, what was it? Google Reader for a long time. And then they died and now I've got Feedly. And so you just kind of try and keep up with all the latest things on there. Reddit, Hacker News, just kind of keep yourself sort of plugged in. But I do think you do run the risk of getting kind of information overload.
Yeah, that's for sure.
And I do think I was going to say earlier, that another thing you can do is, we kind of talk about like products that we would build or products that we're building at a company. And then there's these side projects and everybody's got the meme jokes about like having 10,000 side projects or whatever. But I think there's actually like a level down from that, which is just something to just kind of learn a basic tech. Like, okay, I've never tried Postgres before. Let's just say, I've tried Postgres before. Well, let's say I'm going to try like vector tables in Postgres or whatever, or vector fields. you don't need to write a full app around that. Just write a CLI app that basically just puts in some data and then makes a query. And then you're like, oh, I get it. It like doesn't have to be, it's like, oh, okay. You don't have to write like a full app around it. You don't have to do all that unless you want to. But I think there's a lot of space for these little, like, just exploratory apps that people forget that, like, that's a good way to just kind of learn stuff, especially if you're going into an interview. That's one way that you can kind of distinguish yourself is if it's a company that has an API or, is in a space that you don't really understand, then just, crank out a few of these things, just kind of get a sense of how they're working and maybe if you think it's good or not, like what their APIs are.
Man, I'm really glad you said that. That's been like a tactic I've kind of used over the years because I felt like really behind people in some of the companies I was at, and I was like, I need to learn like WebSockets. I've heard of it. I kind of know what it is, but I don't know how to implement it practically. So like Code Sandbox, like spin up something really quick and like boom. Okay, now I kind of get it. Now I get this really trivial example that I can now go back to work and speak fairly intelligently about, I hope.
But it demystifies it. You're just like, it had this weird, like, ooh, I don't know. It could be this, could be that, could be whatever. It's like, no, it's a pipe. It's like TCP/IP, blah, 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 send some packets. There you go. Yeah, whatever. It's like, yeah. And I think for a while, vector databases were that for me. I'd met a couple of vector DB vendors and they gave all this kind of highfalutin talking sort of stuff. And you're like, I don't know what the heck you're talking about. Kind of the embeddings. What the heck's an embedding? Right. And then I just kind of like went on YouTube and just, watched a couple of videos, watched like some Stanford lectures, which is great. You can go to Stanford without actually paying Stanford money.
That's right.
And and kind of like, oh, wow. Okay. Now I get it. It's not actually all that tough. And the funny thing was actually when it comes to vector databases, I had actually done a kind of, not vector DB, like we just sort of put it all together, to do a shoe recommender there.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. I was working with a product manager on the team that was doing like post-purchasing flow. So you bought the thing, you bought the shoe, and now you go into your orders page and you're like, ooh, I really like that shoe. It actually fit, unlike most Nikes. I don't work there anymore, but like, man, Nikes run small. I don't know what's going on.
My
feet must be big.
And my kids too. Yeah, same thing.
Yeah, right? Like, who are these made for? Yeah. I joke that when I was working there, I used to wear Doc Martens all the time because you could only wear Nikes on campus, but if they didn't make a competitive shoe, then you could wear whatever it was. They didn't make anything competing with Doc Martens. So Doc Martens, and they were comfy. So the post-purchase flow. And when I first got on this project, they didn't even have an order it again button. It's like the one thing, like I found a comfy shoe. I would want to order it again. But the problem was with Nike, they roll their, product, I guess, their catalog so often that like you can come back 6 months later and they don't make that shoe anymore. They don't make that exact SKU. And there's no API. And this is still bonkers in my mind that like they don't have a way to tell that, okay, I'm looking at the 2023 shoe. Here's the 2024 version of it. They don't have that API. So I worked with the product manager to actually come up with a system based on kind of creating like a genetic fingerprint of each shoe based on its tagging, and then being able to run a very efficient algorithm to find like the 10 closest by that. And the algorithm is called a KD tree, and it's basically a vector. And you think about like all those tags as like ones and zeros to be a vector. And then you do a similarity search and it actually turns out pretty well. And we were able to like, if the tags were good, and for shoes they were, but for like weirdly for like women's bras, they weren't very good. So we had to go and like manually retag a bunch of these things. But like, we created this product thing and it did incredibly well for the company actually.
Oh, I can imagine.
Given the amount of like the resources we spent on it were like 2 devs, me and, another front end dev. And like, and we just, the other thing is like, we did it very lightweight. And that's what I would think. Certainly when you're working with these big companies, you can do things in a lighter weight way than you possibly imagine would actually work. Like as an example, when they came to this shoe recommender thing, the first pass of it was just to go and like put JSON files into S3. And the web component would just go, hey, is there a file for this? And it would come back and be like, oh, okay, there you go. And then once we knew that it worked, then we went and actually created, then we went and we created like a full on DB and an API, but like we didn't pre-invest in any of that stuff because you want to start off lightweight and see if it works. And then if it works, then you go and build on top of it.
That's really cool to hear that happens at a company like Nike, but it makes sense. I mean, I worked at Clorox, which is a pretty massive company too. And, you know, you want to vet an idea. You don't want to just go all out and, you know, build something overly complex. You're saying, oh, does this work? Oh, great. Let's move forward, you know, in a reasonable way.
And that's actually something that I see just on their own projects, a lot of junior devs doing. Like they'll come on to, you know, my Discord or something and they'll put up this project and say, this isn't working. I go, okay. So, let's take a look. And, you know, this project's got, you know, Redux and Zustand and, you know, 2 different ways to do CSS and yada. And you're like, what is this? And they're like, well, that's just what And they're just like pouring it in. And you're like, that's not the way to go, man. If it isn't used or if you don't need it, don't put it in until you need it. And then it really needs to justify itself in terms of, you know, the cost of it. But
for sure.
And kind of in that zone of advice would be go from working to working to working. And what I mean by that is as you're like, if you're doing an app, literally start off with hello world, right? If you're creating like your next app, right? Create the next app, fire it up. Make sure it works, right? Just, I've done nothing. I've changed no files. I've done, and it's working.
Does it load, right?
Does it load? And then, you know, when you want to go and add, I don't know, when you change a page or something like that, or add a page, right? The moment that you create it, test it again and create this very rapid cycle of change a very small thing and then test it, and then change a very small thing again and test it. And this may sound obvious to you, right? And probably if you're a more advanced developer, this would sound obvious to you because you've learned this through hard-won experience. Is like, if you go, I think of it like going out on the gangplank of a ship, of like that old pirate vessel. It's like the more changes that I make, the further out on that gangplank I am. And
that's a good analogy.
You know, if I'm like 8 steps in, then if it blows up, then which one of those 8 things was it? You know? Right. Yeah. Whereas if I make very small changes, then I know it's probably the thing that I just did, which makes it really easy to figure out where the issues are. And that's another thing that I see folks coming up with was they'll show up with like 100 lines of code, and it's clear that like there's like 3 different ChatGPT responses kind of smushed together or whatever. You're like,
copy paste. Flow.
Yeah. And you're like, when was the last time this worked? And they're like, never
worked.
Like, what are you talking about? Like, it's supposed to work. I think I smushed in my mayonnaise with my gravy, with my cottage cheese. I'm supposed to smell good, right? It's supposed to be yummy, right? Like, no, man, like one at a time, one thing at a time, 2 or 3, maybe 2 or 3 lines. And as you get more proficient, right, the amount of code that you'll add between tests will get bigger and bigger and bigger, but not crazy huge. And but if you're just starting out, right, just make a one-liner change and then test it and make another one-liner change and test it. That's the granularity that I'm talking about.
Oh yeah. I mean, I've even seen people have something work and then like, you've now hacked this Frankenstein-like function together. And now even if we want to refactor it now we have to extract, like, now it's really tough because you've gone so many steps ahead and copied from everywhere. Now we have to figure out how to untangle this mess. That's really, really good advice. It's something I don't think about as much, but you've hit on like a really good point there.
I just remember it. I remember from my days early on being a little bit afraid of code, I would say. Yeah. Did you remember those times?
Oh,
like, you're kind of like, ooh, like, I don't know if this is going to work. Well, actually, there is one way to find that out.
Yeah.
And that's to run it, you know, and the further you get out on that gangplank, the more that you know, ooh, I don't know.
Yeah. Now the
I'm
stakes
run
have
this
been raised.
thing.
Yeah.
Right.
I like your plank analogy. That was really good. Gave me a really nice mental model of, I'm like, I got to use that now. I'm going to steal that one. You shared with me in our email before this that you have dyslexia.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, how has that like affected your career, or has it? I mean,
oh, wow. It's affected my whole like internal psyche, I would say, in that I'm very insecure, actually. Like when weirdly, like when folks like they'll say, "Oh, you're wrong." Like I think a couple of videos back, I did this thing on Use Optimistic, or maybe it was like actually 2 weeks ago, like a video on Use Optimistic, and this guy like writes, puts in a comment, "You're wrong. You read the docs wrong. The whole model here you're saying is all wrong." I'm like, "Oh, whoa." I'm like, "Ooh, I don't know, maybe." And so I actually like. I'm in the car. I'm thinking about it like, oh God, what if I am? I don't know, kind of thing. And, so it turns out actually he had the original mental model that I had before I really started playing with it. And then I had to do a shift and he just hadn't done that shift. So it was okay. I was fine. But there's that kind of built in insecurity. And what that comes from is when you are dyslexic, at least in my case, I don't do rote memorization all that well. Like if somebody asks me, like my wife, oh my God, my wife asked me like, who's this guy? We're watching like House of the Dragon or something like that. Who's that guy? I'm like, I don't know. Like, who knows? Who knows who that guy? Because there's no way that I can actually create an algorithm that can like deduce who rando guy is on a dragon. Like, I don't know. Like there's no algorithm, like there's no algorithm to create a name. And I'm much better with algorithms. Like when I think about like, I was talking with Jason Langsdorff about this just recently. He's like, the way that I think about like how close should I be to the car ahead of me when I'm behind them is I can see their wheels, the bottom of tires. Right.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. There you go. It's an algorithm, right? I work in algorithms. I don't work in rote memorization of facts. The problem is the educational system, certainly when I was growing up, was all about like, who's buried in Grant's tomb? Who, when was the War of 1912? And obviously it's jokes, but like those kind of things, like a driver's test, like how far away should you be from the car ahead of you? 12 inches, 14 inches, 16 inches. You're like, I don't know. Those all sound good to me.
Does that matter? Yeah. Who's going to notice?
And that's why, like, I was joking, like, my next time I have to do the driver's written test, I'm going to be just completely losing my mind because I can't. I don't know. But so society through school basically keeps telling you you're a failure, you're a failure, you're a failure. And even though you've created a good life for yourself and you've had these great things, you've been in Walmart, doing principal engineer stuff or whatever,
Nike,
blah 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 blah. Yeah, right. In your core, you're still like that little boy who's like, I don't know, the world's so that is always with me. But on the upside, there's always this systemic, this algorithm brain that actually makes it a lot easier to learn tech. So there's it's this kind of like double-edged sword. On the one hand, the society kind of doesn't value it, but on the other hand, it's actually really good for tech.
It's a superpower.
And a lot of folks in tech are neurodivergent, meaning that they just think differently about stuff, and it's actually that there's a value in being able to think systemically, to hyper focus, to do things like that are really beneficial. And so when we started this, I was talking about like when I was 13 years old, like failing out of school, whatever. But that was the one thing that worked for me was computers, because I could do that hyper focus. I could come up with my mind of like, if I wanted this Space Invader to move 3 things over to the right, I'm going to structure the for loop like this, blah, 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 yeah.
That is, thank you, first of all, for being so candid and kind of opening up about that. Because when me or other people, maybe even people look at me now and say, you're at this title, or you have, this show with this many subscribers, and they just kind of think, you got it all figured out. And I think that's the reality, that we all have these insecurities and pieces of ourselves in the past that we look back on. Like I have, won't get all into it, but like a history of addiction that I feel like has actually really helped me in this career. I mean, now I'm addicted to more positive things, not terrible things. But yeah, it's definitely something that makes me feel insecure as well. But I really appreciate you opening up and sharing about that.
And when I was at Nike, my boss at the time, she had I think a third or fourth grader, and she knew that I'd done some volunteering in public schools with my daughter, to teach classes and like what it was to be an engineer, blah, 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 that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And we talked about it, and she's like, hey, we should do this. We should go and take a couple of Nike engineers and go off and like go to schools and that sort of stuff and teach kids. And okay, cool. Sounds like fun. Let's go. And like the first year we kind of made up our own curriculum, but then the second year we ended up doing this BBC microbit thing with the Beaverton public school. So Nike's in Beaverton, and we worked with the public school system, which is good, much better.
Very cool. Yeah.
And they had the curriculum, but we just basically we gave them the people, right? To teach, right? Mm-hmm. And so I would like every couple of weeks I would go to a different school and meet with different groups of kids, but I would stay with the same kids for like, 4 weeks or so to go through these various lessons. And they were fun. They were, the last one was like robotic pets, where you take like one of these little microbit things and you attach some servos and you got like cardboard things moving around, and kids loved it.
Very
cool.
Great. Oh yeah, I bet.
And it's kind of like this fusion of art and science. They really loved. Mm-hmm. But there was this one class where there was this kid, and the teacher said that he's dyslexic, and when he seems to show up, when you show up, he really likes what you are working, what you're doing, and or what he gets to do. And she told me that before the class. And so when we had our little kind of powwow with all the kids on the floor, fourth grade kind of thing, and I'm talking about my experience and what we're going to do, but also like I let them know, by the way, I'm dyslexic, and this is what, give a little background. Anyway, this dyslexic kid comes up to me and says, and I get choked up every time I say it, but like he says, if you can do it, then I can do it too. And that was like, oh, and I think I talk about it now because I want to accept that that's me. Yeah. And get over that insecurity. But also, like, if there's somebody out here that's listening to that and is like, oh man, like I'm struggling with that too. It's like, I'm with you, but it's doable. And yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. I think we all need that. The more people open up about things, it makes you feel less alone. Cause I know that feeling too. You feel like
we're all human.
Who else can relate to
we all
this?
get addicted to things. We all have our mental like model issues, we all, and that's what's great about us. In a way, like no AI is gonna replace us. We're super crazy and cool.
Yeah,
and
we're way too interesting. Yeah,
we're way too interesting. Exactly.
Yeah, there you go. Whew. Yeah, that was almost the first episode where I shed a tear. Jeez, Jack.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That was good. Hey, thank you so much for being on the show today. Really enjoyed this conversation. Yeah, I can't tell you how much I appreciate this. Where can people find you online? We know about YouTube. Is there anywhere else people can find you and connect with you?
So I just finished up a course on Next.js. This is like for the app router, and it's called Pro Next.js. It's on pronextjs.dev.
Great name.
Yeah. And so it's just about to go kind of live for the paid for course, but there are actually 2 free tutorials that are on there that actually cover some pretty gnarly stuff in the app router space. One of them is state management. So people always ask, like, should I use a state manager like Redux with the app router? Like, should you use it? How do you use it safely? All that kind of stuff. That it covers that. And then also forms management, which is also another big deal. Like, how do you do form validation? How do you handle the post? Can you post without JavaScript? Blah, 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 blah. So it also covers a lot of that as well. So those 2 are free. You just sign up for the newsletter and you get that.
Wow.
And then once the course comes out, then you can, talk to your boss maybe about buying it. Cause I don't think it's enterprise grade stuff. There's some amazing stuff in there.
Very cool.
For the enterprise level.
That's awesome. Yeah. I know a lot of people are adopting Next.js, including 2 of the companies I just recently left, actually. So that is
App Router or Pages?
App Router.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's a big mental shift.
It was for me for sure. And I've only used it trivially. So I need to go check this out because I'm very curious about this too, because I was trying to use Redux and thinking, is this Just
is this the right thing to do? I don't know.
Is this the right thing
Yeah.
to do? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Okay, awesome. I can't wait to check that out and give it a little review.
Awesome.
Thanks again. Thanks for
Thank you
being on the
Thank
show
you for having
today.
me. Yeah, my pleasure.
That'll do it for today's episode of the Develop Yourself podcast. To learn more about becoming a software engineer with us, then check out Varsity.io. If you're not quite ready for that, then jump into our Dev30.xyz program, which is 30 days of working on your mindset, habits, and JavaScript skills. Totally worth it. See you next week.